Greenland is the largest island on Earth, yet it remains one of the least understood places in human history. Most people think of Greenland as empty, frozen, and isolated, a place without history, a land outside of time. But that belief is wrong, because beneath this ice lies a story of survival, disappearance, conquest, and secrets buried by climate, empire, and silence. Greenland's history is not a straight line. It is a cycle of arrival and disappearance. Entire civilizations came here. Some adapted, some vanished. Empires claimed Greenland without fully understanding it. And even today, Greenland exists in a tension between identity, control, and global interest. In this documentary, you will discover what lies beneath Greenland's silence, who lived here before history was written, why entire societies disappeared, and why Greenland, once forgotten, is now one of the most strategically important places on Earth. Long before Greenland had a name, humans reached this land against impossible odds. The first known inhabitants arrived thousands of years ago, crossing from North America into an Arctic world shaped by cold, darkness, and scarcity. These early cultures adapted through innovation, cooperation, and deep knowledge of their environment. They did not conquer Greenland, they learned to live with it. Over time, cultures evolved, disappeared, and were replaced by others who followed similar paths of survival. Greenland was never empty, it was always selective. The ancestors of modern Inuit communities arrived later, bringing refined survival techniques. They mastered the environment instead of fighting it. Every tool, tradition, and belief was shaped by ice, wind, and seasonal darkness. Oral history became their archive, because in Greenland, memory mattered more than monuments. Their world was balanced, but it would not remain untouched. In the late 9th century, Greenland entered European history. Norse settlers arrived from Iceland, led by figures seeking land, power, and exile. They called the land Greenland not as truth, but as persuasion. At first, the settlements survived, but the climate began to change. Trade routes weakened, crops failed, isolation grew. Then one of history's greatest mysteries began to unfold. The Norse did not fall in battle. They did not leave records of a final catastrophe. They simply disappeared. Archaeological evidence suggests prolonged struggle rather than sudden destruction. The Little Ice Age tightened its grip. Livestock perished. Communication with Europe collapsed. Isolation became their greatest enemy. By the 15th century, the Norse Greenlanders were gone. No graves, no farewell, only abandoned structures slowly consumed by ice. While the Norse vanished, the Inuit endured. Their survival came from adaptation, not domination. They adjusted to colder conditions rather than resisting them. Knowledge passed through generations, not written texts. Community ensured survival, where isolation had destroyed others. Greenland had chosen who could stay. Centuries later, Europe returned. Denmark claimed Greenland not as a partnership, but as possession. Cultural misunderstanding became policy. Traditions were replaced, reshaped, or erased. Greenland was no longer isolated, but it was not free. Control arrived quietly, and it lasted centuries. During the 20th century, global conflict reached even the farthest edges of the world. Greenland's location transformed it from forgotten island to strategic fortress. Military bases carved into ice and rock. Radar stations watched the Arctic sky. Greenland became a silent observer of global tension. Geography reshaped destiny. In the modern era, Greenland began redefining itself. Language, culture, and identity resurfaced after centuries of control. Autonomy followed, though independence remained complex. A new generation emerged, standing between ancient tradition and an uncertain future. And yet, Greenland's story was far from over. Greenland now faces a transformation unseen in its history, as the ice that once protected it slowly weakens and retreats. As temperatures rise, ancient ice releases what it hid for thousands of years, exposing land, minerals, and forgotten traces. Scientists drilled deep into the ice, reading climate layers like pages of a frozen archive recording Earth's distant past. Each ice layer reveals warming cycles and sudden shifts, echoing the collapse of civilizations that vanished before. Climate change is not the only force reshaping Greenland, as what lies beneath the ice now draws global attention. Rare earth minerals, oil, and gas rest below Greenland's surface, resources critical to modern technology and power. As the ice retreats, access becomes easier and interest from powerful nations grows stronger and more urgent. The Arctic is no longer distant or symbolic, becoming central to energy routes, trade networks, and influence. Military presence increases quietly, described as defense or research, but driven by position and control. Greenland once again stands between forces far larger than itself, repeating patterns from its colonial past. For Greenlanders, the struggle is no longer survival alone, but ownership of land, future, and identity. The ice remembers every arrival, every collapse, and every empire that believed it could master this land. As the ice melts, Greenland's secrets no longer sleep, emerging into a world finally paying attention. As global attention grows, Greenland becomes a quiet stage where economic ambition and political strategy intersect. Foreign investments arrive, promising development, while raising fears of dependency and loss of control. Debates emerge within Greenland over progress, tradition, and the true cost of opening the land to outsiders. Economic opportunity clashes with environmental risk as mining threatens ecosystems shaped over millennia. Melting ice also opens new Arctic shipping routes, shortening global trade paths and shifting power balances. What was once unreachable becomes contested, turning Greenland into a focal point of international rivalry. Behind diplomatic language, long-term strategies form, designed not for decades, but for generations ahead. For Greenland's people, the future feels uncertain, balanced between promise, pressure, and preservation. History suggests Greenland has never been owned, only borrowed by those bold enough to claim it. As pressure increases, Greenland faces decisions that could reshape its identity for centuries to come. Political autonomy offers power, but also responsibility, forcing leaders to choose between protection and profit. Younger generations question old agreements, demanding a future shaped by Greenlandic voices, not foreign plans. Independence remains a distant goal, complicated by economic reliance and the cost of standing alone. Meanwhile, global powers watch closely, aware that Greenland's choices could alter Arctic influence forever. What happens here will not remain here, as climate, trade, and security connect Greenland to the world. The island that once seemed distant now reflects humanity's struggle between progress and restraint. Greenland's silence has ended, replaced by questions that have no easy answers and no clear endings. As ice retreats faster each year, Greenland approaches a point where natural balance may no longer recover. What emerges is not only land, but responsibility, forcing choices that cannot be undone once made. Scientific warnings grow clearer, predicting rising seas and irreversible shifts linked to Greenland's ice. Melting ice here affects distant shores, reminding the world that Greenland's fate is shared globally. Despite warnings, economic pressure pushes forward, valuing immediate gain over long-term consequence. Greenland's people stand at the center of this tension, asked to decide a future shaped by forces beyond them. History shows Greenland resists simple ownership, humbling those who attempt to dominate it. Civilizations that ignored the land's limits vanished, leaving lessons carved into ice and stone. The question now is whether modern society will listen or repeat the mistakes written beneath the ice. Greenland does not demand conquest or escape, only respect for forces older than human ambition. For centuries, Greenland existed beyond the world's attention, shaped quietly by ice, time, and survival. Now, it stands exposed, no longer hidden, as modern civilization reaches even the most remote edges. Technology pierces the silence, mapping terrain once known only through memory and instinct. Yet no satellite can fully measure the cost of disturbing systems built over thousands of years. The Arctic responds slowly, but when it changes, the effects ripple far beyond its frozen borders. Greenland becomes both warning and opportunity, reflecting humanity's struggle with restraint and desire. Those who once vanished here remind us that survival depends not on power, but on balance. The future forming in Greenland will echo long after the present moment has passed. Decisions made today are already shaping landscapes that future generations will inherit. What melts here alters oceans elsewhere, connecting distant nations through invisible consequences. Greenland's isolation once protected it, but now exposure brings attention, pressure, and control. Global powers watch closely, seeing strategic value beneath ice that once repelled interest. Resources hidden for millennia now attract modern ambition, reshaping priorities and alliances. Each discovery raises questions about ownership, responsibility, and the cost of progress. Greenland's history shows that survival has always depended on respecting natural limits. Ignoring those lessons risks repeating past failures on a scale never seen before. Modern choices now test whether humanity has learned anything from civilizations lost to imbalance. Greenland reflects a mirror where progress and consequence appear impossible to separate. As shipping routes open, isolation collapses, transforming silence into constant movement. What was once unreachable now becomes a corridor for global trade and influence. With access comes vulnerability, as fragile systems face pressures they never evolved to endure. Communities at the edge of the world feel changes first, long before others notice. Traditional knowledge struggles to adapt as seasons lose their predictability. The Arctic no longer follows old rules, rewriting survival strategies in real time. Greenland stands at a crossroads, balancing preservation against economic necessity. Every path forward carries consequences that cannot be fully undone once chosen. The choices facing Greenland now resemble moments that once defined entire civilizations. History shows that expansion without restraint often precedes collapse rather than prosperity. Greenland's silence carries lessons ignored elsewhere until consequences become unavoidable. Despite warnings, momentum pushes forward, driven by short-term gains in global demand. The past whispers through uncovered land, reminding humanity of cycles repeated too often. Greenland becomes a living archive, preserving evidence of climates long forgotten. These frozen records reveal rapid shifts that once reshaped life across the planet. What makes this era different is speed, driven not just by nature alone, but by human action. Greenland's transformation forces a question with no simple answer or clear authority. Who decides the future of a land that influences the fate of millions worldwide? The answer remains fragmented, split between nations, markets, and those who call this land home. Local voices often struggle to be heard beneath global interests and distant decision-makers. Promises of development clash with fears of irreversible damage to land and culture. Greenland's future becomes a negotiation between survival, sovereignty, and sacrifice. History suggests that compromise often arrives too late, after balance has already shifted. What disappears here may never return, even if awareness finally catches up. Greenland does not collapse suddenly, but through countless small, unnoticed losses. Each loss reshapes the planet quietly, without headlines or immediate alarm. By the time consequences become undeniable, choices may already be behind us. Greenland stands as a moment in history still unfolding, not yet decided. What unfolds next depends on actions taken far beyond Greenland's frozen shores. Every policy, investment, and delay quietly adds weight to an already fragile system. Greenland absorbs pressure created elsewhere, revealing how connected the world truly is. The Arctic becomes a proving ground for whether restraint can still exist in modern society. Past generations altered landscapes without understanding the consequences ahead. This generation acts with knowledge, making inaction a deliberate choice. Greenland quietly asks whether awareness alone is enough to prevent irreversible loss. Silence here carries weight, amplifying questions left unanswered by progress. The land waits, unchanged in posture, while forces around it accelerate. History remains unfinished, suspended between what was and what may soon be lost. Greenland's story reminds us that history is not distant, but unfolding around us in real time. What happens here will shape coastlines, cultures, and futures far beyond this frozen land. Understanding the past gives us a chance to respond differently before consequences become permanent. The question is no longer whether Greenland will change, but whether humanity will learn in time. Stories like this matter because awareness is the first step toward responsibility. If this story made you reflect, share your thoughts and continue the conversation below. Subscribe for more documentary stories exploring history, hidden truths, and the forces shaping our world.